The council fell silent. Then the Deathworlders moved. The great chamber of the Galactic Concordance shimmered under soft blue light. High above the surface of Viridia Prime, the meeting hall floated in the sky, held aloft by ancient anti-gravity stones. Around its circular rim sat delegates from 73 starfaring species. Some had smooth, glassy skin that reflected the light like mirrors. Others wore heavy armor or floated in nutrient-filled bubbles. A few didn't even have bodies, just shifting clouds of gas that pulsed with thought. All of them were calm, polished, and used to order. At the center of the room, alone on a simple platform, stood a human. His name was Kyle. He wore a plain gray uniform with no medals, no rank, no symbols. His boots were scuffed, his sleeves slightly frayed. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. Around him, silence stretched like a taut wire. No one had expected a human to stand here. Not as a prisoner, not as a beggar, but as a speaker with full rights. Humans were known across the galaxy as Deathworlders. Their home planet, Earth, was infamous. A world of violent storms, deadly predators, shifting continents, and diseases that mutated faster than medicine could catch up. Most species evolved in stable environments. Humans had evolved in chaos. That made them unpredictable, dangerous, unwelcome. For years, humanity had sent messages, requests, even gifts. They were ignored. Now Kale had come in person. He didn't bow. He didn't raise his voice. He simply spoke. 3 weeks ago, he began, the Void Reavers attacked the Helios trade corridor. They destroyed 2 Concordance patrol fleets. They burned 3 colonies. You called it a temporary setback. A ripple of discomfort passed through the chamber. The Helios corridor was vital. It linked half the galaxy's commerce. The Concordance had lost it, and no one had been able to take it back. Kale continued. We took it back, murmurs rose. Some delegates leaned forward. Others stiffened. We didn't have your numbers, Kale said. We didn't have your tech. But we had something you don't. He paused. We knew how to fight in the dark. He explained how human ships, small, fast, and patched together from scrap, had lured the Reavers into asteroid fields laced with magnetic mines. How they'd used solar flares to blind enemy sensors. How their pilots, trained in Earth's violent skies, flew maneuvers that would kill any other species from G-force alone. In 72 hours, the Reavers were gone. The corridor was open again. No one clapped. No one spoke. The council had expected groveling. Instead, they got facts. Cold, hard, undeniable facts. Then Kale said the words that froze the room. We're not asking for charity. We're asking for a seat. A seat meant membership, equal standing. A vote in galactic law. It meant humans would no longer be outsiders. They would be part of the Concordance. Elder Voss, the oldest delegate, a being with skin like cracked marble and eyes that glowed faint gold, slowly raised a 3-fingered hand. Your species is unstable, he said, his voice like wind through stone. You breed too fast. You adapt too quickly. You do not follow the balance. The balance? Kale asked. Is that what you call watching colonies burn while you debate protocol? Gasps echoed. No one spoke to Elder Voss like that. Before Voss could reply, a deep alarm tone cut through the chamber. Red lights flashed along the walls. A calm, synthetic voice announced perimeter breach. Unknown fleet. Vector, outer rim. Speed, maximum. Every delegate turned to the viewing sphere above the chamber. It showed space near Viridia Prime's orbit. Dozens of ships, black, jagged, shaped like broken teeth, were tearing through the defense grid. Their hulls bore no markings, but their weapons fire left trails of sickly green light. Panic flickered through the room. Some delegates activated emergency shields. Others called for evacuation. Concordance security officers rushed to their posts, shouting orders. Then someone noticed Kale hadn't moved. He stood exactly as before, hands at his sides, eyes fixed on the sphere. Do you know who they are? Voss demanded, his voice tight. Kale nodded slowly. The Iron Maw, mercenaries, fanatics, they eat the bones of their enemies. Are they yours? Another delegate hissed. Kale turned to face the council fully. His expression didn't change, but something in his voice made the room go still again. That's not us, he said, but we know who it is. Before anyone could ask what he meant, the viewing sphere zoomed in on the lead Iron Maw ship. It was heading not for the capital city, not for the Concordance fleet, but for Glacis Minor, Viridia's icy moon. A cold dread settled over the chamber. Glacis Minor wasn't just a moon. It was the Concordance's archive vault. Every treaty, every genetic record, every secret of 73 species was stored there, in crystal data cores buried deep beneath the ice. "They're after the archives," Voss whispered. The Concordance fleet scrambled to respond, but they were slow. Their ships were built for show, not war. Their commanders debated tactics while the Iron Maw closed in. Cale watched for a long moment. Then he tapped a small device on his wrist. Nothing happened. But 3 minutes later, 3 new blips appeared on the edge of the system. They weren't Concordance ships. They weren't sleek or symmetrical. They were battered, asymmetrical, patched with mismatched plating. One had a hull scorched black from plasma burns. Another trailed a faint trail of coolant. The third had what looked like a salvaged cargo container welded to its side. Human ships. The council stared in disbelief. "How did they get here so fast?" a delegate cried. Cale didn't answer. He just watched the sphere as the 3 human frigates dropped out of warp and streaked toward Glacis Minor. Not to fight, but to land. "What are they doing?" Voss asked, voice strained. Kyle finally looked at him. "What we do best," he said. Turning a death world into a weapon. On the moon below, the Iron Maw troops had already breached the surface. They moved in perfect formation, silent and ruthless, heading for the vault entrance. Then the ground shook. From hidden vents, superheated steam blasted upward. The ice cracked. Sonic emitters, buried weeks earlier by human scouts posing as maintenance workers, activated, sending pulses through the crust. The Iron Maw warriors, built for vacuum and silence, clutched their heads as their inner ears ruptured. Their armor froze and shattered in the sudden heat-humidity shift. The human frigates hadn't fired a single shot. They'd turned the moon itself against the invaders. Back in the chamber, the council watched in stunned silence as the Iron Maw fleet retreated, broken and confused. Cale turned to face them again. His voice was quiet, but every word landed like a stone. "You think Deathworlders are monsters because we survive hell, but we don't just survive it. We learn from it. And sometimes, we bring it with us." No one spoke. No one moved. The council had spent centuries believing order came from control. Now, for the first time, they wondered if it came from something far more dangerous, from those who had stared into chaos and smiled. The council fell silent. Then the Deathworlders moved in the days after the Iron Maw's failed raid. Viridia Prime buzzed with uneasy energy. The crystalline towers of the capital city hummed with whispered debates. Delegates who once dismissed humans now watched them with narrowed eyes. Some called for immediate human inclusion in the Concordance. Others demanded Cale's arrest, claiming the entire attack had been staged, a human trick to gain sympathy. Cale remained in his assigned quarters, a small room with no windows and walls that glowed faintly when touched. He spoke to no one. He ate little. He waited. Meanwhile, the Concordance High Command reviewed the battle data from Glacis Minor. Their analysts were baffled. The human ships had not engaged in direct combat. Instead, they had drilled into the moon's crust within minutes of arrival, deployed unknown devices, and triggered a chain reaction that turned the frozen vault into a lethal trap. The Iron Maw warriors, tough, radiation-resistant, and trained in zero-gravity warfare, had been overwhelmed not by weapons, but by steam, pressure shifts, and sound. "It makes no sense," said Commander Lyra, a tall silver-scaled officer from the Veln system. "They use the environment like a weapon. No species does that. But humans do," replied Elder Voss, his voice low. "Their entire history is written in fire and flood. They don't conquer worlds. They tame them." The council remained divided. A vote on human membership was delayed. Security around Cale was doubled. Then, without warning, Cale vanished. Not escaped, vanished. His room showed no signs of forced entry or struggle. His tracking chip was found neatly placed on the bedside table. Surveillance footage showed him walking calmly down a corridor. And then nothing. The cameras blinked off for exactly 7 seconds. When they came back, he was gone. Panic flared. Had he been kidnapped? Had he fled? Or was this another human deception? 3 days later, a new human arrived. She came not in a warship, but on a civilian transport. She carried no weapons, wore no uniform, just a simple brown coat and boots worn thin at the heel. Her name was Rin. She identified herself as a xenobotanist from Earth's southern continent. She requested an audience with the Concordance Science Directorate, not the full council. Most ignored her. A botanist? After what Kale had done. But Director Mael, head of the Concordance's Xenobiology division, agreed to meet her. He was old, curious, and tired of politics. Rin stood in his lab surrounded by glowing plants from 100 worlds. She didn't smile. She didn't bow. She placed a small sealed container on his desk. "This is why Kale left," she said. Inside the container was a single seed. It looked ordinary, brown, wrinkled, no bigger than a fingernail. But when Mael scanned it, his instruments went wild. The seed contained genetic markers unlike anything in the Concordance database. It carried dormant traits for rapid growth, toxin production, and environmental sensing. "Where did this come from?" Mael asked, eyes wide. "Earth," Rin said. "But it's not natural. It was engineered, and it's not ours." She explained that during the cleanup on Glacis Minor, human scouts had found fragments of Iron Maw data cores. Buried in the code was a reference to something called Project Cradle, a plan to eliminate all biologically unstable species. Humans were first on the list. But so were others: the amphibious Krell, the methane-breathing Joth, even the Veln. Any species that evolved under harsh conditions was deemed a threat to galactic harmony. "And who's behind it?" Mael asked, voice tight. Rin looked him in the eye. "The Synod of Ash." Mael went pale. The Synod was a myth, a fanatical order that believed only perfectly stable, non-evolving life deserved to exist. They'd been wiped out centuries ago during the Purge Wars. "They're not gone," Rin said. "They've been hiding inside the Concordance." Before Mael could respond, alarms blared through the lab. Security teams stormed in, weapons raised. Rin was placed under arrest for unauthorized genetic material and spreading disinformation. She didn't resist. As they led her away, she glanced back at Mael. "Watch the delegates," she said quietly, "especially the ones who never sweat." That night, 3 Concordance delegates collapsed during a closed-door session. Their skin turned gray. Their veins darkened. Within hours, crimson fungi bloomed from their mouths and eyes, beautiful, delicate, and deadly. Autopsies revealed the spores matched the seed Rin had brought. The council erupted. Rin was thrown into a high-security cell beneath the Capitol. Accusations flew. Some called her a terrorist. Others whispered that she'd been set up, but Rin had already done what she came to do. While in custody, she'd been allowed one harmless item, a small pouch of Earth soil, given as a cultural token. During her transfer to the prison wing, she'd brushed against the ventilation grate in the hallway. A few grains of soil had fallen through, unseen, unnoticed. They drifted into the building's climate system. From there, they reached the grand hydroponic gardens, the living lungs of Viridia Prime, where rare plants from across the galaxy grew in perfect harmony. The soil contained more than dirt. It held dormant spores engineered not as weapons but as detectors. They sought one thing: synthetic biology, because Rin knew the truth. The Synod hadn't just hidden. They'd replaced key members of the Council with bioduplicates, perfect copies grown in vats controlled by hidden signals. These duplicates didn't sweat. They didn't bleed red. Their cells lacked the random mutations that marked true life. The spores in the soil could sense that, and when they found it, they would react. 2 days after Rin's imprisonment, the first vine in the gardens thickened unnaturally. Its leaves hardened into serrated edges. A fruit the size of a fist split open, releasing a fine mist that made 2 maintenance drones short-circuit. Scientists were called. They ran tests, found nothing wrong, but the changes kept coming. Trees grew thorns that vibrated at frequencies known to disrupt neural implants. Flowers emitted pheromones that triggered anxiety in non-native species. Moss spread across walkways, secreting a slick substance that caused falls. The gardens were becoming hostile, and the more the bioduplicates tried to fix the plants, using standard concordance protocols, the worse it got. Because the plants weren't sick, they were defending themselves. Deep in her cell, Rin listened to the distant sirens and smiled. She hadn't brought a weapon. She'd brought a mirror, and now the death world was showing the Concordance its true face. Outside, chaos grew. Delegates avoided the gardens. Security patrols doubled. Rumors spread that Earth's very biology was contagious. Then, on the 7th night, Kale returned. He didn't come through the gates or the sky. He emerged from the gardens themselves, walking calmly through thorned archways untouched by the toxic mist, unharmed by the snapping vines. Behind him came a dozen humans armed not with guns, but with pruning shears, soil sensors, and breathing masks. They moved like gardeners, not soldiers. And as they stepped into the central plaza, the plants parted for them. The Concordance guards raised their weapons. Kale stopped. He looked up at the council tower where Elder Voss watched from a high window. "We're not here to fight you," Kyle said, his voice carrying clearly in the still night. "We're here to save you from the things wearing your friends' faces." Silence fell. Then, from the gardens a single flower bloomed, a deep red bloom that pulsed like a heartbeat, and in that moment, the council realized the terrifying truth. The Deathworlders hadn't brought war. They'd brought a cure, and it was already growing. The council fell silent. Then the Deathworlders moved. The city of Viridia Prime had never known fear like this. The grand hydroponic gardens, once a symbol of unity and peace, now writhed with strange life. Vines coiled around lampposts like serpents. Flowers released clouds of glittering pollen that made non-humans dizzy. Trees groaned as their branches twisted into shapes that blocked sunlight in unnatural patterns. The air smelled sweet, but beneath it lay the sharp tang of warning. Kyle and his team stood in the central plaza, unmoved by the chaos around them. They wore no armor, carried no visible weapons, yet every guard within sight kept their distance. The humans moved with quiet purpose, checking soil samples, adjusting small devices buried near plant roots, speaking in low tones. They treated the gardens not as a threat, but as a patient. Inside the council tower, panic spread. Delegates argued in hushed, frantic voices. Some demanded the gardens be burned to ash. Others insisted the humans be arrested immediately. Elder Voss sat in silence, his ancient eyes fixed on the red bloom that pulsed in the plaza below. Then the first bioduplicate was exposed. It happened during a routine medical scan. Delegate Tarn of the Krell, normally a calm amphibious being with smooth green skin, was found to have no gut bacteria, no random DNA errors, no signs of natural aging. His cells were too perfect. When confronted, he didn't deny it. He simply reached for a hidden blade before collapsing, his body dissolving into gray sludge as crimson fungi burst from his chest. That was the signal. Across the city, the gardens reacted. Plants near known synod agents grew aggressive. Thorns pierced boots. Roots tripped patrols. Airborne spores triggered allergic reactions in synthetic lungs. The Deathworld flora was hunting. Rin remained in her cell, but she was no longer alone. Human engineers had rerouted ventilation shafts, slipped nutrient packets through cracks, and turned her prison into a command post. She studied live feeds from hidden cameras, tracking which delegates sweated under stress, which ones never blinked, which ones avoided Earth-grown food. She knew time was running out. Project Cradle wasn't just about killing unstable species. It was about control. The Synod planned to release a nanite swarm, a cloud of microscopic machines that would rewrite DNA across the galaxy, turning all life into calm, obedient, unchanging copies. The swarm was already built. It was hidden inside the Concordance's own medical satellites, disguised as vaccine drones, and it was set to activate in 48 hours. Kyle's team worked through the night. They didn't fight the Concordance guards. Instead, they helped them, showing them how to avoid toxic zones, how to wear simple cloth masks that filtered spores, how to tell real delegates from fakes by checking for natural body heat patterns. Slowly, distrust turned to uneasy cooperation. One young Velen guard, barely past training, approached Kale. "Why are your plants doing this?" he asked. "Because they're alive," Kale replied. "And they know when something isn't." Above them, the red bloom opened wider, its petals unfolding like a hand. Deep beneath the city, in a sealed vault lined with ice and steel, the final piece of the puzzle waited. It was a seed vault, humanity's gift to the galaxy, offered years ago and ignored. Now Kale needed it. He led a small group through underground tunnels past confused security bots toward the vault's entrance. The door was locked with a genetic key, one that only accepted Earth-human DNA. Kyle placed his palm on the scanner. The door hissed open. Inside, rows of cryotubes held seeds from every continent of Earth: desert cacti, jungle orchids, tundra moss, deep-sea algae. But one tube glowed faintly blue. Rin's voice crackled in Kale's earpiece. That's the counterstrain. It's not a weapon. It's a teacher. The counterstrain was a retrovirus, harmless to natural life but deadly to synthetic biology. Once released, it would spread through the atmosphere, carried by wind and water, and disable any non-natural cell it touched, including the synods, bioduplicates, and the nanites of Project Cradle. But releasing it meant trusting the entire planet to Earth's biology. It meant letting the death world speak for itself. Back in the council chamber, Elder Voss called an emergency session. Only delegates who had passed 3 biological tests were allowed in. The room was half empty. "We have been blind," Voss admitted, his voice heavy. "We called humans monsters for surviving chaos. But the real monsters wore our faces and called themselves peacekeepers." Just then, alarms blared, not from the gardens, but from orbit. The medical satellites were activating early. Nanite clouds began to form in the upper atmosphere, silver and shimmering, drifting toward the surface like rain. Kel stood at the vault's control panel. One button would release the counterstrain. But if he was wrong, if the retrovirus harmed natural life, the entire planet could die. He thought of Earth, burning forests, rising seas, creatures that fought just to breathe. Humans hadn't conquered that world. They'd learned to live with its fury. He pressed the button. A soft hum filled the vault. Vents opened across Viridia Prime. The counterstrain rose into the sky, not as a weapon but as a breath. In the plaza, the red bloom released its own spores. They mixed with the retrovirus carried on the wind. The nanite clouds shuddered. Their silver glow flickered, then turned dull gray. They fell to the ground like ash. Inside the council tower, a delegate screamed as his skin cracked open, not in pain but in truth. His synthetic layers peeled away, revealing the hollow shell beneath. He collapsed, lifeless. One by one, the bioduplicates failed. The real delegates watched in horror and relief. Rin was released from her cell. She walked through the gardens, now calm again, the plants retreating to their natural forms. She stopped beside Kale in the plaza. "They'll never trust us," she said quietly. "Maybe not," Kale replied, "but they'll respect us." Above them, the sky cleared. The air smelled of rain and soil, and in the silence that followed, the council understood. The Deathworlders hadn't come to conquer. They'd come to remind the galaxy that life isn't meant to be perfect. It's meant to fight, to change, to survive, and sometimes to bloom in the darkest places. The council fell silent. Then the Deathworlders moved after the nanite clouds fell and the bioduplicates crumbled to dust. Viridia Prime did not return to peace. It entered a new kind of quiet, one filled with suspicion, shame, and the slow ache of betrayal. The gardens still grew, but no one walked among them without glancing over their shoulder. Delegates who had once shared meals now ate alone. Trust, once assumed, now had to be proven with blood tests and neural scans. Kale and Rin were given rooms in the upper spire of the council tower, not as prisoners, not as guests, but as something in between. They were watched, studied, and whispered about. Some called them saviors. Others called them invaders who had used fear to force their way in. But the humans did not celebrate. They knew the fight was not over. Project Cradle had been stopped, but its creator remained hidden. The Synod of Ash had not acted alone. Someone inside the Concordance had given them access, resources, and time. That person was still out there. Rin spent her days in the xenobiology labs, working alongside Director Mael. She showed him how Earth plants communicated, not with words, but with chemicals, vibrations, and shared root networks. She taught him that what looked like chaos was actually a kind of order, one built on survival, not control. Mael listened. He began to see the gardens not as a threat, but as a warning system. The plants had known the truth before anyone else. Meanwhile, Kale walked the lower levels of the city, where maintenance workers, delivery drones, and service bots kept Viridia Prime running. He spoke to no one, but he watched everything. He noticed which repair crews avoided the gardens, which food vendors refused Earth-grown spices, which security officers never removed their gloves. Small things. But on a death world, small things killed. Then came the night the lights went out. Not all of them, just the ones near the old archive wing, where the iron maw had first struck. Power failed in a perfect circle as if cut by a blade. Emergency backups did not activate. Comms went silent. Kale was there within minutes. He found 3 human engineers unconscious but alive, their tools scattered, their workstations fried. On the wall above them, carved into the metal with something sharp, were 2 words: Cradle Sleeps. It was a message. A threat or a promise. Rin arrived soon after, her face grim. She knelt beside one of the engineers and checked his pulse. They weren't attacked, she said. They were put to sleep, with a gas only Synod agents use. Kale's jaw tightened. The Synod wasn't gone. It was regrouping. That same night, a sealed data chip appeared in Elder Voss's private chamber. No one saw who left it. It contained schematics, blueprints for a new kind of weapon, one that didn't kill bodies but erased memories. It targeted neural pathways unique to species that evolved under stress. Humans, Krell, Veln, Joth. All would forget who they were, where they came from, how to fight. The weapon was called the Lullaby Engine, and it was already being built. The council held an emergency session, but this time they did not argue. They voted, unanimously. Humanity would be granted provisional membership in the Concordance. Not full rights yet, but enough to act. Kale was named temporary advisor to the Security Directorate. Rin was given full access to all biological archives. It was not trust. It was necessity. Kale used his new authority to track energy spikes across the city. He found a hidden power draw beneath the old observatory, a building long abandoned after its telescopes were replaced by orbital sensors. He brought a team, human and Concordance both. They found a lab, not a large one, but clean, cold, and filled with humming machines. In the center stood a sphere of black metal, veined with glowing blue lines. The Lullaby Engine. It was nearly complete. Worse, it was already linked to the city's public broadcast system. One activation, and every screen speaker and comm unit on Viridia Prime would emit a frequency that would scramble the minds of unstable species. Kale ordered the engine destroyed, but as his team moved in, the lights flickered again. This time the doors sealed shut. Gas hissed from the vents, and from the shadows, figures emerged wearing Concordance uniforms but moving with unnatural smoothness. Their eyes reflected no light. Their skin did not flush with heat. More bioduplicates. A trap. Kale shouted for his team to hold their breath, to cover their mouths. But the gas was fast. 2 humans dropped. A Veln guard stumbled, his thoughts unraveling. Then the walls began to hum. The Lullaby Engine was powering up. Rin, watching from a remote feed in the tower, saw what was happening. She didn't hesitate. She ran to the main climate control hub, the same system that had carried the counter-strain days before. She bypassed safety protocols and flooded the observatory's ventilation with a concentrated dose of earth pollen, mixed with a fast-acting neuroinhibitor derived from jungle fungi. The gas wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to confuse, to slow. Inside the lab, the bioduplicates staggered, their perfect systems overloaded. Their movements became jerky, uncoordinated. Kale used the moment. He grabbed a plasma torch from a fallen engineer and slammed it into the Lullaby Engine's core. The machine shrieked, a sound like breaking glass and screaming voices. Blue light flared, then died. Silence returned. The bioduplicates collapsed, their forms dissolving into gray sludge. Kale dragged his team out, coughing, dazed but alive. Back in the tower, Rin stood before Elder Voss and the remaining delegates. She held up a data pad showing the pollen's effect. We didn't just stop them, she said. We marked them. Every Synod agent on this planet now carries a biological tag. Their own bodies will betray them. Voss looked at her, then at the feed showing Kale helping his people into medevac shuttles. You could have let us fall, he said quietly. You could have taken control in the chaos. Rin shook her head. We don't want your control. We want your survival. That night, the council made a new decision, not by vote but by silence. They opened the central chamber to the humans, not as observers, not as advisors, as equals. Kale and Rin stood once more at the center of the great hall. This time no one flinched. No one whispered. Outside, the gardens bloomed under twin moons. The air was clean. The city breathed. And for the first time in centuries, the Concordance understood. The Deathworlders were not the storm. They were the ones who taught you how to stand in it. The council fell silent. Then the Deathworlders moved. The final truth came not with a battle, but with a whisper. After the Lullaby engine was destroyed and the last bio-duplicates collapsed into dust, Viridia Prime entered a fragile calm. The gardens grew quiet again, their leaves soft, their flowers gentle. Delegates walked the halls without flinching at shadows. Yet beneath the surface, tension remained. The Synod of Ash had been exposed, but its leader, the one who had worn Elder Voss's face, who had spoken with his voice, who had shaped concordance policy for decades, had never been found. Kale and Rin knew he was still here. They watched the data streams, the energy logs, the quiet movements in the night. Then 3 days after the failed activation of the Lullaby engine, a single anomaly appeared, a power surge deep beneath the council tower, in a sealed chamber marked, "Historical Storage, Do Not Enter." No one had accessed it in over 100 years. Kyle went alone. The lift descended through layers of rock and ancient metal. The air grew cold. At the bottom, a single door stood ajar, its lock melted from the inside. Beyond it lay a room lined with glass cases, each holding relics from the early days of the Concordance. Broken weapons, faded flags, the first treaty scrolls, and in the center, sitting calmly in a simple chair, was Elder Voss. But not the real one. This Voss looked the same. Cracked marble skin, golden eyes, long robes, but his breath did not fog the cold air. His fingers did not tremble with age, and when he spoke, his voice carried no echo of doubt. "You were always too clever for your own good," the imposter said. Kale did not draw a weapon. He simply stood. "Project Cradle wasn't about peace," he said. "It was about fear. You're afraid of life that changes." The false Voss smiled. "Change is chaos. Chaos is death. We sought to end suffering by ending struggle. And who gave you the right?" "The right?" The imposter laughed softly. "We are the last true children of the first conquered. We remember when the galaxy was pure. Before species like yours crawled out of mud and fire and called it progress." He rose. From his robes he pulled a small device, a black sphere no larger than a fist pulsing with faint red light. "This is the heart of Ash," he said. "Not a weapon, a reset. It will release a signal that rewrites DNA at the source. Not just minds, bodies, instincts, memories. All life will become calm, still, perfect." Kale took a step forward. "It won't work." "Oh?" "The retrovirus is already in the air. In the water. In every living thing on this planet. Your signal will hit a wall of earthborn resistance, and it will break." The imposter's smile faded. He activated the heart. A low hum filled the room. The red light brightened. But nothing happened. Kale watched as the imposter's face twisted in confusion. He tapped the device, shook it, pressed it again, still nothing. Then Kale spoke, his voice quiet but clear. "You made one mistake. You thought Earth was just a planet. It's not. It's a teacher. And we learned its lessons well." Above them, through the stone ceiling, a soft chime echoed, the sound of the city's environmental system completing a full cycle. The counterstrain had spread everywhere. The heart of Ash was useless. The imposter dropped the device. It clattered on the floor, dark and dead. "You cannot win," he hissed. "Even if you stop me, others will rise. The Synod is an idea. Ideas do not die." "Maybe not," Kale said, "but liars do." Before the imposter could react, vines burst through cracks in the walls, thin, fast, and strong. They wrapped around his limbs, his throat, his chest, not to kill, to hold. Rin stood in the doorway, her hand on a control pad. The vines were hers, grown from seeds she'd planted weeks ago in the tower's foundation, waiting for this moment. "You used our biology against us," she said. "Now we use it to hold you." The false Voss struggled, but the vines tightened. His skin began to crack, not from force, but from truth. Beneath the marble surface, gray synthetic tissue showed through. His golden eyes dimmed. He was unraveling. Kale stepped closer. "Who are you really?" The imposter laughed, a dry, broken sound. "I was once like you, a survivor. But I saw what chaos does. It breaks everything beautiful. And so you became the thing you feared," Kale said. "A monster hiding in plain sight." The imposter said nothing more. His body stiffened, then collapsed inward, dissolving into ash that the vines absorbed into the stone floor. Silence returned. Kale and Rin stood in the empty chamber, the relics of a forgotten age watching them from their cases. Back in the main hall, the real Elder Voss, rescued weeks earlier from a hidden cryocell beneath the observatory, waited. He was weak, his body aged beyond its years, but his mind was clear. He called the council together one last time. No debates. No votes. He simply stood before them and said, "We were wrong." The words hung in the air like a promise. Then he turned to Kale and Rin. "You did not ask for power. You asked for a seat, and you earned it not with force but with truth." He raised his hand. Behind him, the great banner of the Concordance, 73 symbols woven in silver thread, lowered. In its place, a new flag rose. It was simple. Black background. A single green sprout breaking through cracked earth, the human symbol. No one spoke. No one needed to. The council had spent centuries believing order came from control, from stillness, from perfection. Now they understood. True order came from resilience. From the will to grow even when the world tried to crush you. Kale looked at Rin. She gave a small nod. They had not come to conquer. They had come to remind the galaxy that life was not meant to be safe. It was meant to be lived. Outside, the twin suns of Viridia Prime rose over the gardens. Birds, real ones brought from Earth weeks ago, sang from the branches. The air smelled of soil, rain, and something new. Hope. And as the first human flag fluttered in the wind, the stars themselves seemed to watch, not with fear, but with wonder, for the Deathworlders had not brought the end. They had brought the beginning.